The term Star Wars canon refers to the collection of Star Wars media considered officially canon by Lucasfilm. Details regarding characters and events reflect the official depictions of the Star Wars storyline throughout the franchise. The official Star Wars canon consists of the 7 released Star Wars theatrical feature films, the Star Wars animated film and television series The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and any other material released after April 25, 2014, unless otherwise stated. On April 25, 2014, Lucasfilm officially revised and solidified the canon, stating that all previously released expanded universe works would be rebranded under the new Star Wars Legends banner, in order to ensure a flowing timeline with the release of the Star Wars sequel trilogy. They also announced that future Star Wars stories will be considered on equal canon level with the films, with guidance coming from the Star Wars Story Group. History: when the Star Wars saga began, there was no initial formal organization of canon. The films, novelizations, comic books, newspaper comic strips, radio dramas, and spin-off novels were produced, but no standards of canon were set by George Lucas or Lucasfilm, Limited, with the creation of new Star Wars novels in early 1991 with Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire. The publishing department at Lucas Licensing set out with a new publishing strategy. Instead of stand-alone books where the events of one did not influence another, the new novels would tie into a continuous storyline. In the words of Lucas Licensing's managing editor Sue Rostany, "Our goal is to present a continuous and unified history of the Star Wars galaxy, insofar as that history does not conflict with, or undermine the meaning of Mr. Lucas's Star Wars saga of films and screenplays." Over the years, many Star Wars fans have wondered whether these books and other materials were part of Lucas's Star Wars storyline, or were merely optional filler material. While there are disputes among fans about what is and isn't canon, Lucas Licensing has established an internal primary canon policy which consists of the 6 films and animated Star Wars series only. Disney acquisition, canon revision and Star Wars Legends on October 30, 2012. Lucasfilm was sold to the Walt Disney Company for $4.05 billion. After the acquisition, Disney and Lucasfilm established Lucasfilm Story Group, a committee whose job is to keep track of and define the canon in an effort to unify the films, comics, and other media with the existing canon. On April 25, 2014, Lucasfilm and Disney removed all expanded universe works from the canon. They announced that the existing 6 films and the Clone Wars television series are the immovable objects of Star Wars storytelling. Previously published material has been relabeled under a Legends label, and future content will present a different vision of people, places and events after Return of the Jedi. They also announced that all future Star Wars stories will be connected and on equal canon level as the films, with guidance coming from the Star Wars Story Group. Additionally, it was announced that the films of the sequel trilogy will not follow the same story as that of the expanded universe works taking place after the events of Return of the Jedi. The first official canon novel in the revised continuity was Star Wars: A New Dawn by John Jackson Miller, which is a prequel novel to Star Wars Rebels. It was released September 2, 2014. Determining canonicity. The Star Wars canon was first defined in a 1994 interview with Lucas Licensing's Sue Rostany and Alan Couch in issue number 23 of the Star Wars Insider. Gospel, or canon as we refer to it, includes the screenplays, the films, the radio dramas and the novelizations. These works spin out of George Lucas' original stories, the rest are written by other writers. However, between us, we've read everything, and much of it is taken into account in the overall continuity. The entire catalogue of published works comprises a vast historia with many offshoots, variations and tangents like any other well-developed mythology. This policy has been further refined and fleshed out over the years. The official Star Wars website has also detailed the role of canon, expanded universe, or reuse sources, and how they fit into overall Star Wars continuity. In a 2001 Ask the Jedi Council response by Steve Sansweet and Chris Sororsi, it was stated that, "When it comes to absolute canon, the real story of Star Wars, You must turn to the films themselves and only the films. Even novelizations are interpretations of the film, and while they are largely true to George Lucas' vision, the method in which they are written does allow for some minor differences. The novelizations are written concurrently with the film's production, so variations in detail do creep in from time to time. Nonetheless, they should be regarded as very accurate depictions of the fictional Star Wars movies. The further one branches away from the movies, the more interpretation and speculation come into play. Lucas Books works diligently to keep the continuing Star Wars expanded universe cohesive and uniform, but stylistically, there is always room for variation. Not all artists draw Luke Skywalker the same way. Not all writers define the character in the same fashion. The particular attributes of individual media also come into play. A comic book interpretation of an event will likely have less dialogue or different pacing than a novel version. A video game has to take an interactive approach that favors gameplay. So too must card and role-playing games ascribe certain characteristics to characters and events in order to make them playable. The analogy is that every piece of published Star Wars fiction is a window into the real Star Wars universe. Some windows are a bit foggier than others. Some are decidedly abstract. But each contains a nugget of truth to them. In a December 6, 2006 post on the official Star Wars forums, Leland Chee made this comment in response to a question regarding whether Sansweet's foggy window was a window into the real Star Wars universe of the films only, or the Star Wars universe of the films plus EU continuity. Film plus EU continuity. Anything not in the current version of the films is irrelevant to film-only continuity. The Holocron equals. By 1996, licensing kept an in-house Bible of reference materials as the volume of publications, facts, and figures grew to such unwieldy proportions that it became difficult to know everything relevant to a particular project. They finally decided something had to be done to organize the increasingly large collection of media which chronicled the Star Wars universe. A system of canon was developed that organized the materials into what was and wasn't fit for the Star Wars story. In 2000, Lucas Licensing appointed Leland Chee to create a continuity tracking database referred to as the Holocron. As with every other aspect having to do with the overall story of Star Wars, the Holocron follows the canon policy that has been in effect for years. The Holocron is divided into 5 levels: G canon, T canon, C canon, S canon, and N canon. These levels are no longer in use after April 25, 2014. G canon is George Lucas canon, considered absolute canon. It includes episodes EO-7, and any statements by George Lucas. Elements originating with Lucas in the scripts, film deleted scenes, film novelizations, reference books, radio plays, and other primary sources are also G canon when not in contradiction with the released films. G canon overrides the lower levels of canon when there is a contradiction. T canon is television canon, refers to the canon level comprising only the animated film Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and the 2 television series Star Wars, The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels. Its precedence over C-level canon was confirmed by Chee. C canon is continuity canon, consisting of materials from the Star Wars expanded universe including books, comics, and games bearing the label of Star Wars. Games and RPG sourcebooks are a special case. The stories and general background information are themselves fully C canon, but the other elements such as character items, statistics and gameplay are, with few exceptions, N canon. S canon is secondary canon, covering the same medium as C canon. It is immediately superseded by anything in higher levels of canon in any place where 2 elements contradict each other. The non-contradicting elements are still a canon part of the Star Wars universe. This includes certain elements of a few N-canon stories. N-canon is non-canon, what-if stories, crossover appearances, game statistics, and anything else directly contradicted by higher canon ends up here. N-canon is the only level that is not considered official canon by Lucasfilm. Any published material that contradicts things established in G canon and T canon is considered N canon. List of Star Wars canon, included as a list of Star Wars canon as released by Kathleen Kennedy and the Star Wars Story Group. The new canon is streamlined in that it no longer creates confusion among fans. It has been stated that from here out, if content is released it is considered canon. The timeline is sorted by how many years the canon material occurs before or after the Battle of Yavin, which occurs in A New Hope. References. External links, Continuity, Canon, and Apocrypha at Curtis Saxton. Star Wars, Technical Commentaries, The Star Wars Canon, Overview at canonwars.com, Star Wars Canon on the Wikipedia.